On the morning of September 24, 1980, John Bonham, the legendary drummer of Led Zeppelin, woke up to what should have been a day of excitement. The band was gearing up for their first tour in 3 years, a chance to reignite their dominance over the rock world. Yet beneath the anticipation lay the storm of Bonham's struggles, a storm that would lead to one of the darkest days in music history. Bonham, affectionately known as Bonzo, was no stranger to excess. His larger-than-life personality extended far beyond his unparalleled drumming. That morning, as Led Zeppelin's assistant Rex King picked him up, the tone for the day was set. At breakfast, Bonham knocked back 4 powerful vodkas before the first rehearsal note had even been played. The band convened at guitarist Jimmy Page's home in Bray, England, a tranquil village that masked the turmoil brewing within Bonham. The day unfolded with rehearsals, laughter, and camaraderie, but Bonham's drinking escalated. Each hour brought another glass, and each glass brought him closer to the edge. By evening, his movements were unsteady, his speech slurred, a shadow of the man who commanded drum kits with thunderous precision. As the day waned, concern grew among his bandmates. They were used to Bonham's indulgences, but this was different. When the night ended, they made the fateful decision to put him to bed in one of Page's spare rooms, carefully laying him on his side to prevent the worst from happening. It was a precaution born of experience, but this time, it wouldn't be enough. Morning came, September 25th, 1980. The house was still and eerily quiet. At 1:45 p.m., Led Zeppelin's road manager Ben Lefebvre went to check on Bonham. He knocked, called out, and finally pushed open the door. What he found would haunt him forever. Bonham lay motionless, his face pale, his body unnaturally still. Lefebvre tried to rouse him, shaking him gently at first, then frantically. Desperation set in as he searched for a pulse, but there was none. Panic swept over him as he called for help, but when the ambulance arrived, it was already too late. At just 32 years old, John Bonham, the heartbeat of Led Zeppelin, was gone. The cause of death was grimly fitting for the lifestyle he led: pulmonary aspiration. Bonham had choked on his own vomit, a result of consuming an almost unimaginable amount of alcohol, equivalent to 40 shots of vodka over 12 hours. According to Dr. Edmund Hempstead, Bonham's body had gone into shock, his liver overwhelmed by the relentless tide of toxins. Death hadn't come swiftly. It had stalked him for hours, quietly and inexorably. The news sent shockwaves through the music world. Bonham wasn't just a drummer. He was a force of nature. His innovative, thunderous style had redefined what rock drumming could be, leaving an indelible mark on countless musicians. His death didn't just end a life, it fractured a band that had come to symbolize an era. In the weeks that followed, the remaining members of Led Zeppelin wrestled with an impossible question. Could they go on without him? By December 4th, 1980, their answer was clear. In a simple, heart-wrenching statement, they announced the band's dissolution, citing their profound respect for Bonham's memory and the bond that could never be replaced. Fans mourned not only Bonham, but the end of Led Zeppelin, a band that had ruled the 1970s with an iron grip on the rock world. In the years that followed, brief reunions teased what might have been, most notably at the 2007 O2 Arena show immortalized in Celebration Day. But Led Zeppelin, as it once was, would never return. The loss of John Bonham remains one of rock's great tragedies. His drumming, immortalized in songs like Kashmir and When the Levee Breaks, continues to inspire, a testament to his unmatched genius. Yet his death raises questions that linger to this day. What if he had drunk less? Could his bandmates have done more to intervene? Would Led Zeppelin have soared higher, rewriting rock history? We will never know. What remains is the legacy of a drummer who gave everything to his craft and paid the ultimate price. John Bonham's life was as intense and electrifying as the music he created, and his death stands as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk behind the glimmering facade of rock stardom. On June 7, 2024, tragedy struck Disneyland in Anaheim, California. Bonnie Mavis Lowe, a beloved employee with 24 years of service, tragically lost her life in an accident that shocked the Disneyland community to its core. Bonnie, 60, had spent her career at Club 33, the exclusive, iconic private dining club in New Orleans Square. On that fateful day, she was a passenger in a golf cart traveling through the backstage area near Critter Country. The cart, moving at about 20 miles per hour, hit an unexpected bump. Bonnie instinctively reached for the handrail to steady herself, but it failed, either loose or unable to withstand the sudden force. Without anything to hold on to, Bonnie was thrown from the moving cart, landing headfirst on the ground. The impact fractured her skull, causing severe brain swelling. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, stabilizing her and transporting her to the hospital. Despite doctors' best efforts, Bonnie was declared brain dead by the morning of June 9, 2024, and passed away the following day. The loss was felt deeply throughout the Disneyland resort. President Ken Potrock expressed his sorrow, offering support to Bonnie's family and colleagues. But in the wake of the tragedy, questions quickly arose about the circumstances of the accident. Bonnie's colleague, Ray Delgado, took to social media, demanding answers. She highlighted the failure of the handrail as a critical factor in Bonnie's fall, and called for better safety measures in the park. The incident raised serious concerns about Disneyland's safety practices. Was the golf cart properly maintained? Why did the handrail give way? Investigations focused on determining whether any mechanical or design flaws played a role. The Disneyland community, devastated by Bonnie's passing, was left searching for answers, determined to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Bonnie had dedicated 24 years to making Disneyland a place of magic, and her death underscored the fragile balance between joy and danger that exists behind the scenes. Her legacy lives on, but her tragic death leaves the Disneyland family questioning how something so preventable could happen in the happiest place on Earth. Have you ever watched an old-school action flick and thought, man, they really didn't hold back? Well, in the case of the 1969 film Shark, they might have gone way too far. Directed by Samuel Fuller and starring Burt Reynolds, yes, the mustache himself, and Sylvia Pinal, this movie has gained a grim reputation, not for its plot but for a chilling on-set incident that's been the stuff of Hollywood legend. Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the murky waters of this controversial tale. The film follows Kane, a gun runner, played by Reynolds, stranded in a remote Red Sea port. There, he meets Anna, a scientist, or so he thinks, who ropes him into diving in shark-infested waters under the guise of scientific research. Spoiler alert, she's not exactly working for National Geographic. Turns out, Anna and her partner are treasure hunters looking to loot a sunken ship. Based on Victor Canning's novel, His Bones Are Coral. The movie was shot over 9 weeks in 1967 in Manzanillo, Mexico, which doubled as the Sudanese coast. By 1969, Burt Reynolds was on his way to becoming Hollywood royalty, but even a rising star needed a stunt double for the riskier scenes. Enter 32-year-old Jose Marco, tasked with handling the film's more perilous moments. It was during the filming of an underwater sequence off the coast of Isla Mujeres, Mexico, that things took a shocking and, some say, suspicious turn. Since CGI wasn't an option, unless you count shaky miniatures, the crew decided to use a real, live shark for authenticity. And that's where the story splinters into 2 versions. In one, the crew had tranquilized a bull shark, but after being hauled ashore and manhandled, the shark wasn't exactly in a zen mood when they returned it to the water. It breached the protective netting and, well, let's just say it wasn't interested in following the script. Another version claims that out of nowhere, a massive, great white shark crashed the party, charging through the net like it owned the place. What followed is straight out of a horror movie. The shark, whether bull, great white, or some other sea beast, allegedly went for Jose Marco. Chaos erupted. Crew members armed with spear guns scrambled to intervene, but it was too late. Marco was attacked in front of horrified onlookers. Though he was reportedly rushed to a hospital, he tragically succumbed to his injuries hours later. Director Samuel Fuller didn't take the incident lightly, He quit the film in disgust when producers chose to exploit Marco's death as a marketing ploy. The film, originally titled Kane, was renamed Shark and advertised as a thriller with real-life danger. Adding fuel to the fire, Life magazine published a series of chilling photos allegedly showing Marco's final moments. But not everyone bought the drama hook, line, and sinker. Enter Dewey Bergman, a journalist from Skindiver magazine. His investigation raised eyebrows and a few red flags. Bergman found zero evidence of Marco's existence, let alone his death. Local Mexican newspapers were silent on the incident, and the hospital named in the story denied ever treating such a case. Suspicious yet, Bergman wasn't done. He noted inconsistencies in the supposed shark attack footage and pointed out that the shark in the scene appeared sedated, or worse, dead. Marine biologist Richard Ellis backed him up, arguing it was highly unlikely for a great white to break through protective netting. Oh, and the blood in those infamous photos? Allegedly just ketchup. Real tragedy or elaborate hoax? The story of Jose Marco remains shrouded in mystery. Either way, it's a chilling reminder of the extreme and sometimes questionable lengths filmmakers have gone to for that perfect shot. In Hollywood, danger might be part of the job, but this story takes it to a whole new level. It was a quiet, unassuming night in Caratinga, a small town nestled in southeastern Brazil. Life here was simple, almost uneventful, and for João Maria de Souza, a 45-year-old man, this night seemed no different. He lay soundly asleep beside his wife, Lenny, in their modest home at the base of a steep hill. But destiny, it seemed, had other plans. The date was July 2013, and as the couple slumbered peacefully, an unusual chain of events unfolded just beyond their knowledge. A massive, one-ton cow had escaped from a nearby farm. It wandered aimlessly under the cover of darkness, its heavy steps muffled by the quiet of the town. Drawn inexplicably to their property, the animal climbed onto the roof of João's house, a roof made of fragile corrugated iron, never meant to support such weight. The silence of the night shattered in an instant. With a deafening crash, the roof gave way, and the enormous cow plummeted into their bedroom. Chaos erupted as João's side of the bed bore the brunt of the impact. Lenny woke to a nightmare, a massive animal thrashing amidst the ruins of their ceiling, her husband pinned beneath its bulk. Miraculously, Lenny emerged unscathed, and even the cow survived the bizarre fall without injury. João, however, lay trapped, groaning in pain but conscious. The scene was surreal. Debris littered the floor, and João's breaths came in short, strained gasps. Emergency services arrived swiftly, extracting João from the wreckage. Though in immense pain, he remained lucid as he was rushed to the hospital. A fractured leg appeared to be the extent of his injuries. A stroke of fortune, considering the absurdity of the accident. His family clung to hope, believing the worst was behind them. But fate had one more cruel twist to deliver. At the hospital, João's condition began to deteriorate unexpectedly. What seemed at first to be a survivable ordeal spiraled into a medical tragedy. Hours ticked by as João awaited proper examination, his family growing increasingly desperate. Internal bleeding worsened, and their hope turned to anguish. By the time doctors finally attended to him, it was too late. João succumbed to his injuries, leaving his loved ones devastated and enraged. Being crushed by a cow in your own bed, that's no way for anyone to go, his grieving brother-in-law lamented to the press. His mother, inconsolable, spoke of the bitter irony. I fought to save him when he was a child, only for him to die like this. It's unbearable. The local police launched an investigation, determined to uncover the answers to a cascade of questions. Who owned the cow? How did it escape? And most haunting of all, could this tragedy have been avoided? Photos of the aftermath, a gaping hole in the roof, João's grieving family standing beside his coffin, painted a harrowing picture of a life cut short in the most bizarre of circumstances. For João's family, the bizarre accident was compounded by their fury at the healthcare system's delays. To them, it wasn't just the cow that claimed João's life, it was negligence. both human and systemic. In this quiet town, what began as an ordinary night ended in a tragedy so strange and cruel that it defied belief, leaving behind echoes of grief, anger, and unanswered questions. It was a seemingly ordinary day on June 6, 2024, at the University of Chicago Comprehensive Cancer Center in Hyde Park, a construction project that symbolizes hope and progress. But for 27-year-old construction worker David O'Donnell, it would be his last day on Earth. Perched high above the ground on a scaffold, David was diligently working alongside Jeffrey Spurka, a seasoned ironworker. Neither man could have imagined the horror that was about to unfold. The project, overseen by Turner Construction and involving multiple contractors, had been running smoothly despite mounting tensions over safety concerns. Workers had warned about the scaffold's precarious attachment at the southwest corner, warnings that fell on deaf ears. Adding to the growing danger, Chicago's unpredictable weather took a menacing turn that morning. By midday, winds were gusting at over 40 miles per hour, but work continued. The scaffolding, towering over 100 feet above the ground, was tethered by a fragile piece of plywood, a makeshift bridge that would soon become a symbol of neglect. As the wind howled, witnesses below watched in horror as the scaffold began to sway violently. Panic rippled through the construction site, but for David and Jeffrey, there was no escape. Then it happened. A thunderous crack echoed as the plywood connection gave way and the scaffold began to collapse. David, without a harness or rope to anchor him, plummeted over 80 feet to the ground. Rescuers fought desperately to save him, but it was too late. David succumbed to his injuries. Jeffrey, though critically injured, miraculously survived, cushioned by a pile of PVC pipes that broke his fall. His survival came at a cost: severe brain and body injuries that would alter his life forever. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the construction industry. Questions swirled like the wind that day. Why were warnings ignored? Why was work allowed to continue in such hazardous conditions? Investigations by OSHA and other agencies uncovered a chilling truth: basic safety protocols had been overlooked. The plywood bridge, secured by a few flimsy nails, had been a ticking time bomb. The aftermath was a storm of lawsuits and shattered lives. David's grieving family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Turner Construction and Adjustable Forms Incorporated, citing gross negligence. Jeffrey Spurka, scarred physically and emotionally, sought justice through his own legal battle, determined to hold the responsible parties accountable. Both families fought not only for compensation but for something greater: change. Their lawsuits exposed glaring safety gaps and demanded accountability. David's death became a harrowing reminder of the human cost of cutting corners. Meanwhile, Jeffrey faced a long, grueling road to recovery, haunted by the trauma of that fateful day. As the construction industry watched closely, the case became a rallying cry for better safety standards. For David's family, justice meant ensuring no one else would suffer the same fate. For Jeffrey, it was about reclaiming his life and demanding a system that values lives over deadlines. This wasn't just an accident, it was a preventable tragedy, one that reminds us all of the fragility of life and the devastating consequences when safety is treated as optional. Let us take you back to 2008. Renowned director John Woo, the mastermind behind Hollywood hits like Face Off and Mission Impossible 2, was gearing up for his grand return to Chinese-language cinema. His ambitious project, Red Cliff, a historical epic chronicling the legendary Battle of Red Cliffs in 208 AD. Think larger-than-life naval warfare, political intrigue, and enough drama to make even Game of Thrones jealous. Expectations were through the roof, not just from Woo's fans, but from the Chinese government itself. This wasn't just a movie. It was a cinematic homage to one of China's most iconic historical events. No pressure, right? But like any grand tale, this one wasn't without its share of misfortune. Woo envisioned Red Cliff as a sprawling, two-part epic that would depict the fall of the Han Dynasty and the rise of the Three Kingdoms era. Naturally, this meant colossal battle sequences, jaw-dropping set pieces, and action scenes so intricate they'd make a Marvel movie look like a backyard play. Yet, challenges began piling up even before the cameras started rolling. For starters, casting was a nightmare. Several key actors dropped out, forcing Wu to scramble for last-minute replacements. Then came the logistical headaches. The Yangtze River, a crucial element of the story's authenticity, was off-limits for filming due to government restrictions. Left with no choice, the production had to rely heavily on special effects, an expensive and time-consuming compromise. But Wu, ever the perfectionist, refused to let these obstacles derail his vision. Little did he know, the worst was yet to come. The real tragedy struck during the filming of a climactic naval battle. Picture this: a small boat was scripted to crash into an ancient warship, triggering a controlled blaze. The scene was designed to be intense, dramatic, and breathtakingly realistic. But on that ill-fated day, the flames leaped beyond the crew's control. A sudden, unplanned burst of fire swept across the set, consuming not just the boats, but the entire scene in a matter of moments. What was supposed to be a cinematic spectacle turned into a nightmare. Amid the chaos, 23-year-old stuntman Liu Yangqing found himself trapped, unable to escape the fast-spreading inferno. Emergency crews acted quickly, managing to rescue other injured crew members, but for Liu, there was no way out. Later, investigations pointed to a volatile gas leak as the likely culprit, which had accelerated the fire and sealed Liu's tragic fate. At the time of the incident, John Woo was in Hong Kong promoting the film. When the devastating news reached him, he was reportedly shattered. He immediately rushed back to Beijing to be with his team, visibly shaken and heartbroken. The production issued a heartfelt statement, expressing deep sorrow and promising full support to Liu's family and the injured crew members. But no amount of words could undo what had happened. For Wu and everyone involved, this wasn't just a production mishap. It was an unimaginable loss. Despite the shadow of tragedy, the production of Red Cliff continued. When the film finally premiered, it was hailed as a masterpiece, earning widespread critical acclaim and smashing box office records across Asia. In mainland China, it even toppled the Titanic as the highest-grossing film at the time, a monumental achievement. But for those who had worked on it, the triumph was bittersweet. No matter how celebrated the film became, it carried the weight of 23-year-old Liu Yangqing's untimely and heartbreaking death. His sacrifice became an indelible part of the movie's legacy, a reminder of the immense risks taken to bring epic stories to life. September 23, 2017. The air was crisp in the Welsh countryside, and Elizabeth Isherwood, a 60-year-old former police officer, arrived at the Plas Talgarth holiday complex near Machynlleth, Wales, ready for a peaceful retreat. This trip wasn't just a vacation, it was a final farewell to the family timeshare her loved ones had recently sold. But what was meant to be a quiet week of reflection and relaxation turned into a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. Elizabeth would never make it back home. Elizabeth, known as Mary to those closest to her, was vibrant, fit, and full of life. A grandmother who adored her grandchildren, she was the type of person who had seen the world, embraced its challenges, and met them head-on. From her days as a police officer to her more recent work as a carer, she thrived in helping others. But on her first night at Plas Talgarth, fate trapped her in a horrifying struggle for survival. Sometime in the middle of the night, Elizabeth rose from her bed, disoriented in the unfamiliar surroundings. She mistakenly opened the door to the airing cupboard instead of the ensuite bathroom. A faulty door handle snapped behind her, locking her in the small, suffocating space. Clad only in her skin, she was now a prisoner in a dark, narrow cupboard, isolated from the world. Panic set in. Elizabeth fought with every ounce of her strength. Hours passed as she clawed at the walls, desperate for an escape. She broke a pipe in her frantic struggle, hoping to use it as a tool to break free. Instead, water sprayed relentlessly, drenching her and hastening the onset of hypothermia. Her body trembled as the cold seeped into her bones, but she refused to give up. With sheer determination, Elizabeth managed to punch through the plasterboard wall. Relief must have surged through her as she saw daylight, only to find that the hole she created was blocked by a picture frame screwed to the wall on the other side. Her cries for help echoed through the building, muffled and misunderstood. A couple staying nearby heard the banging, but dismissed it as maintenance work. Their decision to wait until morning to report it sealed Elizabeth's fate. By 5 p.m. the following day, all went silent. The banging stopped, the cries faded, and Elizabeth's fight came to a heartbreaking end. She succumbed to hypothermia, her exhausted body unable to endure the brutal cold any longer. It wasn't until a week later, on the day Elizabeth was supposed to check out, that staff discovered her lifeless body. She had never even unpacked her suitcase. The scene told the story of her final moments, a tale of resilience and unimaginable suffering. For her son, Craig, and her ex-husband, Clive, the news was shattering. Craig, faced with the impossible task of explaining the tragedy to Elizabeth's beloved grandchildren, described it as the hardest conversation of his life. The family was not only grief-stricken but angry. How could a faulty door handle and a lack of proper maintenance lead to such a horrific death? The inquest ruled Elizabeth's death a misadventure, but to her loved ones, it was a preventable tragedy. Craig took legal action against the resort, not for financial gain but to ensure no other family would endure such heartache. The fight wasn't just for justice, it was for Elizabeth's legacy, a woman who deserved so much more than to be forgotten as a casualty of negligence. Elizabeth's story is a stark reminder of how quickly the ordinary can turn deadly, how a single moment of oversight can spiral into a devastating loss. It urges us to demand better safety measures, to advocate for accountability, and to honor those who, like Elizabeth, fought with every breath to survive against impossible odds. It was July 13th, 2023, near Revelstoke, British Columbia, where the air was thick with smoke and the summer sun seemed to burn brighter than ever. The wildfires ravaging the province had reached an alarming intensity, and on this day, 19-year-old Devon Gale, a fierce and determined firefighter with the BC Wildfire Service, would face the ultimate test of her strength and bravery. Devon, known for her unshakable kindness and unrelenting sense of duty, had spent the last 3 fire seasons on the front lines, clearing brush in remote, heavily wooded areas where fires could ignite with frightening speed. It was dangerous, grueling work, and it was work that Devon thrived in. Her colleagues and family remember her as a young woman who gave everything, her compassion, her heart, and her very soul, toward helping others. But on this scorching afternoon, as the relentless wildfires continued to spread across British Columbia, it would all come crashing down in the most unexpected way. This wildfire season had been unlike any other. Over 350 fires raged out of control, consuming more than 1.2 million hectares of forest. The heat was suffocating. The BC Wildfire Service was stretched to its limits, calling for 1,000 international firefighters to assist in the battle. Amidst the chaos, Devon, ever the volunteer, had once again answered the call. Her team had been tasked with clearing brush in a remote area, the kind of work that no one would willingly do unless they had Devon's courage. But this day, with the fire lurking in the distance and the oppressive heat bearing down on them, the forest seemed to hold a dark secret, waiting to reveal its deadly intent. Around 3:30 p.m., the phone rang at the Revelstoke RCMP. The frantic voice on the other end of the line reported a terrible accident. Devon had gone silent, lost contact with her team. As her colleagues rushed to the scene, the air seemed to thicken with dread. They found her trapped under a fallen tree, her body crushed beneath the weight of nature's fury. The seconds ticked away in those frantic moments as her team rushed to administer first aid and desperately attempted to airlift her to Queen Victoria Hospital. But despite their best efforts, it was too late. Devon had succumbed to her injuries, an unthinkable loss that sent shockwaves throughout the province. The news of her passing spread like wildfire, igniting a wave of grief from every corner of Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and British Columbia Premier David Eby Both expressed their sorrow, recognizing the bravery and sacrifice of Devon and all the firefighters who risked their lives each day. But it was Devon's family who felt the deepest ache, a void that could never be filled. Her brother Nolan, himself a firefighter, took to Instagram, his words heavy with grief. He spoke of his sister, her humility, her selflessness, her unwavering dedication to others. "She was the best person I knew," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. A sister, a firefighter, a hero. Devon's death, though rare among the brave souls who fight wildfires, was a stark reminder of the overwhelming risks these men and women face. Firefighters like Devon give everything for their communities, putting themselves in the line of danger every day, and sometimes even that isn't enough to survive. In the wake of her tragic death, investigations were launched by the BC Wildfire Service, WorkSafe BC, and the BC Coroner Service to understand the circumstances surrounding her passing. What happened? How could a life so full of promise be taken so soon? But amid the grief, the community stood tall in remembrance. A memorial was held in Revelstoke to honor Devon's life, and hundreds of mourners lined the streets, their hearts broken but their spirits strong. Members of the BC Wildfire Service, fire departments, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police all paid their respects as the sound of solemn bagpipes filled the air. Her siblings Nolan and Kylan, both firefighters, stood before the crowd, their voices choked with emotion. Nolan spoke of Devon's enduring legacy, urging everyone to remember her for the incredible person she was, humble, kind, and brave. Kylan, struggling to hold back tears, urged those gathered to honor Devon's memory by laughing, by living, because that's how Devon would have wanted to be remembered. Her colleagues, too, shared their tributes. Stephen Hood, a fellow firefighter with the BC Wildfire Service, described Devon as an untamable spirit, full of life, beauty, and a passion for her work. Casey Robinson spoke of Devon's ability to make everyone feel like part of the team, ensuring that even the newest recruits felt supported and ready for the danger ahead. Born on November 24, 2003, in Langley, British Columbia, Devon was no stranger to physical challenges. She excelled in competitive swimming, skiing, and trampoline gymnastics, all of which shaped her into the fearless woman she became. But it was firefighting that captured her heart. She poured herself into protecting her community, channeling the energy of her athletic pursuits into the fight against nature's destructive forces. At the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, where Devon had been pursuing her dream of becoming a nurse, her loss was felt deeply. Leslie Cormack, the principal and deputy vice-chancellor, spoke on behalf of the entire campus, offering condolences to Devon's family and recognizing the profound impact her passing had on the university community. Devon's legacy, her commitment to both firefighting and nursing, was a testament to her boundless desire to make the world a better place. And though her life was tragically cut short, she will never be forgotten. At just 26 years old, Wu Yongning was living life on the edge, literally. Known as the Chinese Superman, he became a social media sensation for his jaw-dropping, heart-pounding stunts on the tops of skyscrapers. Wu was a pioneer of roof-topping in China, a trend that saw thrill-seekers dangling from dizzying heights without safety equipment, capturing footage that had viewers gasping and clutching their phones in disbelief. If you thought pulling off a perfect pull-up at the gym was impressive, Wu took it to the extreme, dangling from one hand, balancing on narrow beams, and pulling off mid-air acrobatics at altitudes that made noses bleed. By 2017, Wu had posted over 500 videos of his gravity-defying feats, amassing over 1 million followers who eagerly awaited his next death-defying clip. His videos garnered millions of views, earning him sponsorship deals and even a bit of cash for those jaw-dropping stunts. But Wu wasn't just in it for the fame. His life had a deeper storyline brewing, one that would make his final stunt all the more poignant. On November 8, 2017, Wu set his sights on his next big challenge at the Huanhua Center in Changsha, the capital of China's Hunan province. His plan? To film one of his signature pull-up stunts, a spectacle that would leave his audience breathless. In true Wu style, He free-climbed nearly 20 floors. No ropes, no nets, just sheer nerve and skill. The climb itself was enough to make anyone's palms sweat, but Wu wasn't stopping there. As the camera rolled, he began his performance, showcasing incredible strength and control. However, tragedy struck when he struggled to pull himself back onto the ledge. In a matter of seconds, he lost his grip, plunging roughly 45 feet to a terrace below. The fall was fatal. For weeks, Wu's fans were left in eerie silence, noticing the absence of his usual uploads. Rumors swirled, and soon, confirmation of his death came from his girlfriend, breaking hearts across his massive online following. To add to the tragedy, it was revealed that Wu had taken on this stunt as part of a contest to win money. The reward wasn't just for show. Wu had been planning to propose to his girlfriend the very next day and wanted to help cover medical expenses for his ailing mother. Talk about a modern-day Romeo, only this tale had a gut-wrenchingly sad ending. Amid the grief, Wu's parents were outraged, pointing fingers at the social media platforms that had profited from his dangerous stunts. They argued that these platforms, as commercial entities, had incentivized his risky behavior. Their lawsuit eventually led to a court ruling that held the live-streaming app Huajiao partly responsible, ordering a modest payout of 30,000 yuan, about 4,300 to Wu's family, a small consolation for an immense loss. Wu Yongning's tragic story became a wake-up call, prompting Chinese authorities to tighten regulations on live streaming platforms. Yet, despite the heartbreak and headlines, the appetite for daredevil stunts online didn't wane. Wu's legacy lives on as a stark reminder of the fine line between breathtaking bravery and devastating loss. It was January 27, 2018, a day that began like any other at Nair Hospital in Mumbai but would soon descend into tragedy. Rajesh Maru, a 32-year-old man from Lalbagh, walked into the hospital not knowing he was taking his final steps. A devoted son, a caring friend, and a man known for his helpful nature, Rajesh was there to assist his brother-in-law's ailing mother, Laxmibai Solanki, who urgently needed an MRI scan. The hospital's hallways buzzed with routine activity as Rajesh, alongside his brother-in-law Harish, wheeled Laxmibai towards the MRI section. There, a staff member issued a familiar warning: no metal objects beyond this point. The powerful magnetic field of an MRI machine could turn even the smallest metallic item into a deadly projectile. Rajesh, cautious by nature, removed all metal from his person. But then came a fateful request. A ward boy, Vithal Shavan, handed Rajesh an oxygen cylinder and instructed him to bring it inside the MRI room. Rajesh hesitated, his instincts screaming against it. "Is the machine turned off?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. The ward boy waved off his fears, replying with an air of confidence, "This is our daily work, don't worry." Trusting the hospital staff, Rajesh stepped into the MRI room with the cylinder in hand. Within seconds, his life spiraled into a nightmare. The MRI machine, still operational, roared to life as its magnetic field grabbed the metal cylinder with ferocious force. Rajesh was yanked forward as if by an invisible hand, his body slamming into the machine. His hand, still clutching the cylinder, became trapped between the machine and the massive object. In the chaos, the cylinder's flow meter shattered, releasing liquid oxygen that sprayed onto Rajesh's face and into the room. The scene was pandemonium. Harish and the ward boy rushed to free Rajesh, but the magnetic pull was unrelenting. In the struggle, Rajesh's left index finger was severed. Panic turned to horror as Rajesh gasped for air, the excessive inhalation of oxygen suffocating him rather than saving him. Rajesh was rushed to the trauma center, but it was too late. By the time he reached the emergency ward, he was gone. The hospital fell into stunned silence as news of Rajesh's death spread. His father, Gulab Maru, arrived, his face etched with grief and disbelief. "How could this happen? How could such negligence take my son's life?" he cried, his voice breaking under the weight of his loss. The MRI room, now a crime scene, revealed the grim reality of a system that had failed catastrophically. Police quickly arrested Dr. Siddhant Andhera, ward boy Vital Shavan, and another staff member, Sunita Survey, charged them with causing death by negligence under Section 304A of the Indian Penal Code. An internal investigation was launched, and representatives from Philips, the MRI machine manufacturer, were called in to inspect the site. As the Maru family prepared to cremate Rajesh, their grief was compounded. Laxmibai, the very person Rajesh had died trying to help, succumbed to her illness days later. But even in death, Rajesh's ordeal wasn't over. His severed finger, a crucial part of Hindu last rites, remained trapped in the MRI machine for days. When it was finally removed, it was sent to a forensic laboratory, where it would remain for 18 months. For the family, the wait was an agonizing reminder of their loss. They made countless trips to the hospital and police station, fighting bureaucracy to retrieve the finger. Only on June 20th, 2019, were they able to claim it and perform Rajesh's final rites. Standing by the waters at Worli, they scattered his ashes, hoping to find a sliver of peace amid the torment. The tragedy sparked outrage across Mumbai. How could a hospital, a place of healing, become the site of such a horrifying death? Negligence and lax safety protocols had cost Rajesh his life, and his family was left not only grieving but battling for justice. Local politicians promised compensation, but the Maru family alleged that even those promises went unfulfilled. "This wasn't just an accident," said a devastated Harish. "It was a preventable tragedy, one caused by carelessness and indifference." Rajesh Maru's death stands as a chilling reminder of the catastrophic consequences of negligence. His story is not just one of loss, but of the urgent need for accountability, safety, and respect for human life. It was January 15, 2024, in the coal-rich town of Dart, Queensland. The Saraji South coal mine, a hub of ceaseless activity and roaring machinery, began its day like any other. For 27-year-old coal miner Luke O'Brien, this was just another shift. Known for his passion for mining and speedway racing, Luke had a zest for life that resonated with everyone who knew him. But this day would end in tragedy, leaving a permanent scar on his family, friends, and the entire mining community. The morning unfolded uneventfully until the unthinkable happened around midday. Luke, alongside a co-worker, was tasked with towing a stuck B-double fuel truck. It was a routine operation, one they had done countless times. But fate had other plans. Standing between the tray of a light utility vehicle, Ute, and the truck's bull bar, Luke was focused on his task, unaware that his life was seconds from ending. In a sudden, horrifying turn, the Ute rolled backward. The crushing force pinned Luke against the truck. Time seemed to stop as workers rushed to his aid, their shouts swallowed by the rumble of machinery. Emergency services were called, but the remote location meant they wouldn't arrive for over an hour. When paramedics finally reached the scene, Luke was rushed to Dart Hospital. Despite their best efforts, his injuries were catastrophic. By evening, the unthinkable became reality. Luke was gone. The news of his death rippled through the tight-knit mining community like a shockwave. Luke wasn't just a miner. He was a son, a friend, and a beloved member of the speedway racing world. His parents, Iet and Taryn O'Brien, were left shattered, their grief pouring out in heartfelt tributes. "Our hearts are broken," his mother wrote. His father, a longtime racer himself, shared the unimaginable pain of losing his youngest son. Friends and colleagues flooded social media with memories of a hard-working, spirited young man who lived life to the fullest. The tragedy didn't just leave a hole in the lives of those who knew Luke, it sent a chilling reminder of the inherent dangers in mining. Resources, Safety and Health, Queensland, RSHQ, launched an immediate investigation, joined by police and safety inspectors. Early findings pointed to procedural failures, fueling outrage within the industry. Questions loomed. Could this have been prevented? Were safety protocols ignored? Operations at the mine were halted, not only to investigate but to allow workers to process the loss of their colleague. Leaders across the industry voiced their sorrow, with Adam Lancy, BMA's asset president, emphasizing a renewed commitment to safety. Meanwhile, Queensland's Resources Minister, Scott Stewart, delivered a somber statement, calling the incident a heartbreaking reminder of mining's risks. Luke's story resonated far beyond the coalfields. The racing community at Mozart Gladstone Speedway remembered him as a fierce competitor and a humble soul who respected everyone he met. Friends like Glenn Payne recalled the joy he brought to their lives, while colleagues mourned the loss of a man who was more like family. This wasn't just an accident. It was a devastating loss that exposed the fragile line between routine and catastrophe. Luke's death serves as a wake-up call for the industry, sparking demands for stricter protocols and better oversight. His family and friends continue to fight for accountability, hoping to prevent another family from enduring the same pain. Luke O'Brien's legacy is a stark reminder of the risks workers face every day. Behind the machinery and progress are lives, irreplaceable, valuable, and deserving of protection. His story is one of heartbreak and resolve, ensuring his loss will not be in vain. It was 1978, and A.J. Bakunas was about to cement his place in Hollywood history, or so he thought. Perched atop a 22-story construction site in Lexington, Kentucky, the 27-year-old stunt performer was ready to pull off a record-breaking free fall. With cameras rolling and a crowd gathered below, A.J. stood at the edge, determined to prove that gravity had met its match. Then, with one bold step, his story took a devastating turn. Albert John Bakunas Jr. wasn't always a Hollywood daredevil. Once upon a time, he was a gym teacher in Fort Lee, New Jersey. But in 1974, he traded chalkboards for crash mats, diving headfirst into a career as a stuntman. His big break came the following year in a Dog Day afternoon, and before long he was renowned for his fearless, jaw-dropping falls. Tall buildings, helicopters, no problem for A.J. Bakunas. By 1978, Bakunas was rubbing elbows with A-list stars, doubling for Burt Reynolds in Hooper, Zrania, and breaking records left and right. Earlier that year, he'd set a world record with a daring 230-foot fall from a helicopter, only to see it shattered by fellow stuntman Dar Robinson, who bested him with a 286-foot leap. That loss stung, and Bakunas wasn't about to let it slide. He was determined to reclaim his title, come what may. His chance came while working on Steel, a drama about skyscraper construction. Doubling for actor George Kennedy, Bakunas had already nailed a 9-story fall for the film, but that wasn't enough to satisfy him. Hungry for the record, he persuaded the production team to let him go higher, much higher. The new stunt would take him 315 feet above the ground, an altitude that made even seasoned professionals nervous. A doctor on set and an air safety expert both tried to talk him out of it, but A.J. wouldn't be swayed. On September 21, 1978, with a crowd of around 1,000, including his father, watching below, Bakunas climbed to the top of the towering Concade Towers. Standing on the edge, he took a deep breath and leapt, plummeting toward the safety pad at speeds estimated at 115 miles per hour. But as he hit the pad, disaster struck. The airbag, designed for falls just over 100 feet, split under the impact. A.J. had attempted to reinforce it with a second pad, but the modifications weren't enough. Critically injured, Bakunas was rushed to the hospital. Tragically, he passed away the next day, just shy of his 28th birthday. In the wake of his death, Steel took on an eerie legacy. When it premiered in 1980, the promotional slogan celebrated the triumph of its fictional construction crew. They reached for an impossible dream and built a miracle. But after the film flopped at the box office, the marketing strategy shifted drastically. Renamed Look Down and Die for its re-release in Los Angeles, the movie was rebranded as a harrowing thriller, complete with grim taglines like, "One slip and you're dead." Audiences who attended this re-release were met with an unsettling surprise. The real footage of Bakunas' fatal fall had been edited into the movie. What was meant to be a tribute to his bravery turned into a macabre marketing ploy that left viewers and critics uneasy. A.J. Bakunas' story is one of ambition, courage, and tragedy, a reminder that even the boldest dreams can come with devastating costs. It was November 3rd, 2014, in Jersey City, New Jersey, a brisk, ordinary morning as the city buzzed with its usual rhythm. Gary Anderson, a 58-year-old delivery man from Somerdale, set off to work, unaware that this day would end in unspeakable tragedy. His destination was a high-rise construction site on Christopher Columbus Drive, where two towering 50-story residential buildings and a hotel were being built. For Gary, it was just another day on the job, but fate had other plans. Gary was known for his reliability and strong work ethic. His truck, boldly marked with the phrase, "Owned by God," reflected the deep faith that guided his life. He was well liked by colleagues and cherished by his family, his wife and daughters, who were his world. But on this day, a small, seemingly insignificant mistake would set off a chain of events leading to devastating consequences. By 9 a.m., the construction site was alive with activity, workers shouting over the hum of machinery. Gary parked his truck near the site, preparing to deliver drywall. His hard hat, a critical piece of safety gear, sat forgotten in his car. Nearby, on the 50th floor, high above the bustling chaos below, a construction worker adjusted his tool belt. Among the tools was a simple, 1-pound tape measure, dangling precariously. Then, it happened. The tape measure slipped free. It began its descent from the 50th floor, accelerating rapidly. Nearly 500 feet below, Gary was leaning into the window of a pickup truck, chatting casually with a colleague. He had no idea that death was hurtling toward him at over 140 miles per hour. The tape measure, now a lethal projectile, struck a piece of construction equipment about 15 feet above the ground. The deflection altered its path, but not its deadly speed. It ricocheted downward and straight into Gary's head. The impact was catastrophic. Gary collapsed instantly, unconscious before his body hit the ground. Chaos erupted. Workers rushed to his side, their shouts mingling with the wail of approaching sirens. An ambulance arrived swiftly, and Gary was rushed to Jersey City Medical Center, but the damage was too severe. Despite the efforts of emergency staff, Gary went into cardiac arrest and was pronounced dead at 9:52 a.m. His wife and daughters, who had rushed to the hospital, were met with the unimaginable news. Gary, their rock, their protector, was gone. The construction site fell silent in the wake of the tragedy. Gary's colleague, who had been speaking with him moments before the accident, was in shock. "It's terrifying," he muttered. "I had no idea something so small could do so much damage." Nearby, workers echoed the sentiment, their faces pale with the stark realization that a single oversight could claim a life in an instant. Safety discussions quickly followed. "You don't work in this environment without a hard hat," a former construction worker remarked. Yet, even with a hard hat, experts later noted, Gary's chances of survival were slim against the sheer speed and force of the falling object. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, launched an investigation, scrutinizing the site's safety protocols. How had a simple tool fallen? Could this have been prevented? The site was temporarily shut down, but for Gary's family, no investigation could bring back the man they loved. Gary's colleagues remembered him as a devout, hardworking man. Just before the accident, he had been telling a story and uttered the words, "God is good." Now, those words carried an eerie resonance, a reminder of how fragile life is. This tragedy was a chilling testament to the unpredictability of life and the grave dangers that can lurk in even the most routine tasks. For Gary's family, the loss was not just a headline, but an unbearable void. And for the construction workers left behind, his death served as a somber warning. Even the smallest mistakes can carry the weight of tragedy. It was August 15, 2017, in the heart of the dense Sirhowy forest near Celyn Fox, South Wales, a place where towering trees loomed like silent giants, holding secrets and dangers within their sprawling canopy. For 24-year-old Ben Thomas, it was supposed to be an ordinary day, albeit one he had volunteered for despite it being his day off. Ben was eager to prove himself in his new role as a forestry worker with Tree Finesse, a Pontypool-based company he had proudly joined just 4 months earlier. A former scaffolder, Ben had longed for a career that connected him with the great outdoors. After earning his forestry qualifications in January 2017, he couldn't wait to make his mark, and his enthusiasm for the work was contagious. That morning, as the team prepared for their routine tree-felling tasks, no one could have foreseen the grim twist that would follow. Ben arrived at the site, his face lit with determination. He was joined by colleagues Mark Whitehead and Elliot Wilmer, and together they tackled the job with precision and adherence to safety protocols, maintaining the mandated 50-meter distance while cutting trees. It was a rule meant to ensure their safety, but on this fateful day it would not be enough. As the hours ticked by, the rhythmic hum of chainsaws echoed through the forest. Around noon, Ben's voice cut through the noise. "I'm finished." It was a signal that his task was complete, a routine call his colleagues had heard countless times before. Mark and Elliot, focused on their own work, barely paused. Moments later, the sound of Ben's chainsaw fell silent. At first, the quiet seemed unremarkable, but as the minutes dragged on, an uneasy feeling crept in. Mark and Elliot removed their ear defenders and strained to listen. The faint idling of Ben's chainsaw reached their ears, a sound that should have meant he was fine, yet something felt wrong. They called out his name, but there was no answer. The unease turned to dread as they rushed toward the sound, weaving through the thick underbrush. What they found froze them in their tracks. Ben was pinned beneath a massive tree. The tree he had felled had caused a long-leaning sleeper tree to collapse, crashing down with devastating force. Mark and Elliot worked frantically, their chainsaws roaring as they tried to free their friend. But as precious seconds turned into agonizing minutes, it became clear their efforts were in vain. Ben's injuries were catastrophic. His body bore the unmistakable signs of trauma. Emergency services were called, but the forest's rugged terrain made the journey slow and treacherous. Paramedic Daniel Waits eventually arrived, but his grim expression confirmed what Mark and Elliot feared most. Ben was gone. The autopsy would later reveal the horrifying extent of his injuries: fractured ribs, lacerated lungs, and crushing asphyxiation. Tests confirmed he was sober and alert, a diligent worker caught in a tragic twist of fate. The accident sent shockwaves through the community and triggered investigations by Gwent Police and the Health and Safety Executive. At the inquest, Senior Coroner Caroline Saunders listened as colleagues, supervisors, and forestry experts painted a picture of a man dedicated to his craft. Mark Whitehead, Tree Finesse's manager, described Ben as a meticulous worker who had felled an astonishing 15,000 trees in his short tenure. But it was Elliot's testimony that struck the deepest chord. He recalled Ben's final words, "I'm finished," and the haunting realization that their desperate attempts to save him had come too late. Forestry expert Martin Lennon provided the chilling explanation. The sleeper tree, hidden from Ben's view, had been destabilized by his work, creating a deadly domino effect. It was a freak accident, an unseen danger lurking in the forest's shadows. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury ruled Ben's death accidental. The inquest cleared Tree Finesse of negligence, concluding that safety procedures had been followed to the letter. Yet the verdict offered little solace to those who had lost a friend, a son, a colleague. For those who knew Ben, his death was more than a tragic accident. It was a stark reminder of the unpredictable dangers faced by forestry workers every day. The forest, with all its natural beauty, had turned into a merciless killer. Ben's story echoes with the pain of loss, but also the resilience of those left behind. His name lives on, a symbol of dedication and the fragile balance between man and nature, a balance that, on one fateful day, tipped tragically out of favor. In 1986, Hollywood's king of stunts, Dar Robinson, was at the top of his game, literally and figuratively. At just 39 years old, he was a legend in the industry, boasting an unbeatable 13-year streak as a stunt double without so much as a broken bone. Seriously, The man made leaping off skyscrapers look safer than stepping on a Lego. But fate, it seems, had a cruel plot twist in store for this real-life action hero. Dar wasn't just any stunt performer. He was the stunt performer. Over his career, he shattered 21 world records and even invented the decelerator, a device that let stuntmen pull off jaw-dropping high falls without the need for airbag landings. It made action scenes more realistic and, ironically, safer. From Steve McQueen to Clint Eastwood, Robinson worked alongside the biggest stars and delivered some of the most daring feats in film history. His resume sparkled with achievements, like a breathtaking 311-foot freefall from a helicopter and a nerve-wracking plunge off Toronto's CN Tower, which was, at the time, the tallest freestanding structure in the world. All this made him Hollywood's highest-paid stuntman, a title as hard-earned as it sounds. But Dar wasn't just a behind-the-scenes daredevil. He occasionally stepped into the spotlight, most notably in Burt Reynolds' Stick, where he showcased his trusty decelerator in a hotel rooftop fall. Careful planning and precision were his trademarks, qualities that kept him in one piece despite his death-defying profession. Yet, tragically, even the most meticulous preparation couldn't save him from the unexpected. On November 21, 1986, while filming the movie $1 Million Mystery, Dar Robinson's luck finally ran out. He had already nailed the main stunt sequence for the day, so much so that the emergency medical team on set had been dismissed. All that remained was a seemingly straightforward motorcycle run, zipping along a series of turns at 50 mph for a camera shot. Simple, right? Not quite. As Robinson approached a sharp turn near the edge of an embankment, he missed his braking point. Instead of making the turn, his motorcycle veered straight off the path. Within moments, the bike, and Dar, plunged over the edge. The fall itself was bad, but the landing was catastrophic. He struck a rock ledge, tumbling further down the slope, and was ultimately impaled by a tree branch. It was a devastating accident. Despite a rush to get him medical help, the injuries were too severe, and Dar Robinson died en route to the hospital. Hollywood mourned the loss of one of its brightest talents. In 1988, a documentary titled The Ultimate Stuntman, a tribute to Dar Robinson, was released to honor his incredible career and pioneering contributions to the stunt world. Films like Cyclone and Lethal Weapon, which Robinson worked on before his passing, included tributes in his memory. In fact, the end credits of Lethal Weapon bear a heartfelt message, saluting Robinson as one of the greatest stuntmen the industry had ever seen, a sentiment shared by all who had the privilege of knowing him. Dar left behind not only a grieving family, his wife Linda and sons Troy and Landon, but also a legacy that reshaped the stunt profession. His innovations and fearless artistry continue to inspire generations of stunt performers who still strive to match the high bar he set.